Renault is no stranger to the electric car market. Over the last 10 years, the French brand has sold in excess of 400,000 battery-powered vehicles. The most popular is the Renault Zoe, but it's also got the Twizy and Kangoo light van. But now it's got an all-new flagship C-segment competitor. It's called the Megane E-Tech Electric, and it faces stiff competition, most notably from cars like the Volkswagen ID.3 and Cupra Born. There's no mistaking it for anything other than a Renault with that large emblem on the front, but it does have some interesting styling features, very thin LED headlights and a distinctive LED daytime running light that makes it very obvious to spot on the road. It's quite a chunky design. There is certain crossover elements to it, especially when you consider that it's got quite large wheels, and on this particular model you can see that the wheel arches are painted and so is the sills. It houses one of the thinnest batteries on the market. Renault says it's only 110 millimeters thick, it's 2 meters wide and almost the full width of the car. It comes in two sizes, 40 kilowatt hour and 60 kilowatt hour, the latter offering up to 470 kilometers of range in the WLTP cycle. The car is very aerodynamic as well, so it has air curtains in the front here which channel air around the face of the wheel. There's still conventional door mirrors, but the door handles sit flush with the bodywork, and on the rear the door handle is actually integrated into the C-pillar. When you look at a car side on, you can see how it does look a bit more crossover than conventional C-segment hatch. The contrasting black roof helps lower the height of the car, but this car is actually a couple of millimeters lower than the Renault Zoe. Around the back, it's a very small and narrow rear window. I'll touch more on that when we get inside. You get a light bar that runs all the way across the back of the car. To open the boot, simply push this square button here, and that gives you full access to the boot. There's a reasonably wide aperture and it is quite deep as well, so you can get a lot of things in there too. Getting into the rear is actually quite easy, even though it looks like it's quite a small door aperture. Getting in isn't that hard. And once you're in, it's quite roomy inside. The roof is okay. I've got probably a couple of inches of headroom. I'm 5'9", and I can reasonably stretch out here in front of the driver's seat. So this is set up from my driving position. I've got a couple of inches of knee room. I can just about get my feet in under the seat in front. And the windows themselves, although they're not particularly high, they are quite long, so I can see quite a good bit out as well. So if I'm sitting in the back, even though it's quite dark, there's no glass roof in this car, I can still have a pretty good field of vision from when I'm sitting here. There's reasonably small door bins. They're okay. You can get a small drinks bottle in there. There's a pouch at the back of each seat as well, so you can put in maybe a tablet, computer or magazines. There's a pair of USB-C charge ports here. I've got ventilation here, although no temperature controls. And the actual seat itself, the headrests and all that aspect of the front seats aren't particularly big, so I can still see into the front quite easily. In fact, from where I'm sitting, I have a full unobstructed view of that large 12-inch tablet display in front. So if I was watching the map, for example, or anything like that, it's very easy for me to see. Overall, it's quite roomy back here. The middle seat, just the shape of it isn't really ideal for sitting on for any long amounts of time. This is really ideal for having two big comfy seats. You've got a nice bit of bolstering on the base of the seats as well, so if you're in either the outer seats, it's quite comfy. The middle one is a little bit of a compromise, but that's a very common thing in this segment of the market. There's no fold down armrest on this particular model. The seats do have a split folding function, so if you do need to put bigger items in and you don't have anyone in the back, you can lower that down. And also both of the outer seats have ISOFIX points. They're very easy to access. They just have two little covers here, so if you do need to get in and out, it's quite good. And the fact that the doors are quite long, although that could be a little bit of a pain opening in a car park, it does open wide enough that if you're an adult trying to put in a small child into a seat, it is a little bit easier. If you haven't sat into a Renault in quite some time, you could be in for a surprise when you get into the Megane E-Tech Electric. This is, well, it's quite snazzy, it's quite smart, it's fairly upmarket. Granted, this is a range-topping model that I'm in, but the overall layout doesn't differ a great deal across the range. The steering wheel is not square, but not round. It's quite a decent shape, it's reasonably big, and everything is quite neatly laid out. On the left side, you have touch controls for all of the driver assistance systems like cruise control, everything like that. And on the right then, you have volume, a button to answer the phone, all that kind of aspect is handled on the right side. There's the multi-sense switch, which will toggle through the different drive modes. What's more impressive is the dual 12-inch display. The instrument cluster aspect of it is very crisp and clear. It's very easy to read. It's very nicely laid out. You can clearly see how much battery range you have left. It will show you your speed, how much your energy you're using. Either side of that, you have some air vents, and then there's this portrait style, again, 12-inch display. It's now a Google-based system, which is similar to what we have in the Polestar, and it's really useful to use. It's very intuitive. It reacts incredibly quickly to all of your inputs. There's no discernible lag. One feature I really love is the fact that it has Google Maps as its native satellite navigation system. Not only does that work very, very well, but it will also show you how much battery you're going to have left at your destination when you have that inputted. That's quite useful too. If you input a charge point along the way, it will also tell the car that you're going to be stopping and charging, and it will start to prime the battery so that it is at the optimum temperature for when you plug in. Better still, there are still physical controls here as well. It's not an entirely digital experience, so important key features you're going to use and want to be able to use intuitively without looking is things like adjusting the temperature in the cabin on either side. That's possible. You've still got a physical hazard light switch and a central locking button. Below that is a wireless charging pad. Again, very useful to have. You can just put it in there. The car does have wireless Android Auto and wireless Apple CarPlay, so that means you can keep your phone charging there all the time. And this is then leaves a lot of space here for this open area. There's a storage unit here, which you can then have various dividers and set it up according to how you want it. There's also a cup holder. There's more storage here, and under the armrest there's also then another bin as well, so you can put more items away. There's a reasonably good sized glove box. It's perhaps a little shallow, but it's fine for keeping documents in. One other feature that's in this range-topping model is you get a normal rear view mirror. If I'm honest, what you can see out of the back is pretty limited because of the shape of the rear window and the roofline, and that's even without having anybody sat in the rear seats. The good thing is it's a camera-based system, so you just flick that toggle and you then get a live unobstructed view from the rear-facing camera. Again, like what we've seen in Land Rover product and Range Rover product of late. It's very crisp, it's very clear, it's easy to see. It should work reasonably well at night too. It doesn't give you, it gives you a wider field of view, but it does mean that if somebody comes very close up behind you in traffic, you can't necessarily see all of the front of their car. It's not a wide angle lens, but it works quite well. I've been using it all day today, and I've rarely gone back to using the conventional mirror function. I just prefer that. The only thing is obviously as you turn your head, you're not going to get a different angle of view. It's always just the same, but it is wider, so that's a good thing. One other thing to talk about as well is the quality of the materials inside. It's definitely taken a step up from what we've seen in past Renaults. This has a lot of leather, like for example on the top there's this leather effect and this wood inlay across the tops of the doors, but on lower spec models there's really nice fabric options as well, and I actually think they look better than what's in this range-topping model. So do have a look at some of the other materials that are out there. There's a good choice, and I think they actually look a bit more stylish. Having such clean aero around the car means it is a little bit quieter, and there's only a little bit of wind buffeting around the mirrors when you get to higher speeds, partly because the glass itself isn't particularly thick. There's also a layer of foam between the battery and the cabin, and that again helps suppress some of the road noise from entering to the inside. The steering is a little bit different as well. The ratio has been changed from what we typically see to one that requires far less input, so you're not turning the wheel as much to get the same amount of steering angle. The CMF EV platform does also allow for slightly better suspension setup. It has a multi-link rear end, and what that really translates to is it handles a little bit more sweeter. It's what you see in normally slightly higher, more upmarket models, particularly some of the German cars would often use a multi-link rear end. All it really means is that at the higher speed stuff and in the twisties, it seems a little bit more composed, a little bit more solid, less likely to bounce around, and only on very uneven road surfaces that we've experienced today did the suspension feel a little bit busy. For the most part, it soaks everything up very, very nicely. But the big question on everyone's lips will be, how good is the Megane E-Tech Electric in terms of its battery usage? Well, this being the 60 kilowatt hour, we started with a full charge this morning, and throughout the day I've covered a whole variety of different driving scenarios, from motorway, steep inclines, mountainous roads, fast flowing country roads, and some town and city work. So we've really covered a gamut of different driving scenarios, and so far it has been returning over 210 kilometers. It has showing a consumption of 15.8 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which I think is pretty respectable for a car like this, given the way we've been driving today. I haven't been trying to be super slow or super careful. I've driven it exactly how an average normal person would drive it, so I haven't given it any special treatment, just been driving it normally, and it's done a very good job, I have to say. I'm quite impressed by what Renault has done. Part of that efficiency comes from the fact that this is a slightly lighter car than some of the competitors. Renault says it's around about 100 kilograms lighter than a Volkswagen ID.3. And weight is the key when it comes to electric vehicles. Having a little bit less weight makes all the difference in a car like this. Now granted, as well, with those consumption figures, I have been on my own in the car today, so it's just me. I haven't had 2 or 3 other people in the car, which would naturally add weight. But over the course of the day, it's done very, very well. Renault could well be on to being the efficiency king of the segment with this car.